Can the newly ranked Missouri Tigers actually win the SEC? Well, if they're going to, you better start with a dub in Austin tonight. Let's talk about it all. Right now, I'm Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And on today's program, I want to talk about a very well-deserved honor from Caleb Grill. A lot of respect being put on Missouri's basketball team all of a sudden. Got plenty to get to in the program. Want to start by saying that from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And you know, for as much as Missouri is now looking like it's on the right side of the March Madness bubble, without a doubt, I think the Tigers, at least at this moment, shouldn't lower expectations. In fact, let's raise expectations a little bit. With Missouri tied for second place right now in the SEC, why not shoot for first? Yes, Auburn does indeed have an important tiebreaker over Missouri, but no more games against the Auburn Tigers, and certainly there's going to be some upsets to come. Nobody is going to go undefeated in this conference. But as I said, some respect being put on Missouri's name here finally as the Tigers enter the AP Top 25 poll at 22nd for the first time in quite a spell. Also, the Tigers 24th in the coaches poll as well. And whether you think Missouri has a chance to win the league or not, well, I think it's going to be really determined over probably these next 4 ball games or so, if Missouri truly has a chance. First of all, you got to start with, I think, a road victory tonight in Austin, a game that is basically projected as a toss-up. Now, Texas is definitely not playing its best basketball right now. As Florida, the Gators wiped the floor with the Longhorns by 24 points in Gainesville after Missouri took down Florida, obviously, in Gainesville. So sorry about that one, Horns. I think the Gators might have had a little bit of something to prove there in that particular ball game. I was curious on what Jonathan Davis over at Locked On Longhorns thought. Sorry, I'm a little bit tongue-tied here this morning. Well, Jonathan said, well, we're off to a horrible start in conference play and have only beaten Oklahoma, who we always beat in basketball lately. So he says, I'm going with Texas, but Missouri has a great chance to win. Only reason I'm rolling with Texas is because it's in the Moody Center. So fair enough there. I certainly would feel pretty confident about Missouri going into this game if it were in Mizzou Arena. But on the road in Austin, that's going to be a tough ball game for sure, and a really, really impressive win if Missouri is able to pull it off. And with Texas, obviously, tonight and Ole Miss coming to Columbia on Saturday, well, you look at the projections, and as I said with Texas, kind of same thing with Ole Miss. These are basically 2 toss-ups on paper. Now, the erstwhile Texas coach, by the way, Chris Beard, has things rolling pretty good already in year 2 with the Ole Miss Rebels. They're looking like a top 20 type of program and ball club right now. But here's the thing. If Missouri can win tonight, if they can somehow win a couple coin flips in a row, steal these 2, I'm at least thinking the SEC title is in play, especially with, remember I brought up Auburn. Of course, Missouri lost convincingly down on the Plains. Well, Janai Broome is hurt right now. We'll see what his status is, but there's a chance here that Auburn could drop a game or 2, give Missouri and everybody else in the league a chance to catch up a little bit. And the thing is, with these next two ball games. Again, in Austin, Columbia against Ole Miss. A really tough couple games after those two. You're at Mississippi State. I don't believe Missouri's ever won at the hump over these years in the SEC, and then at Tennessee as well. Plus, then you follow it up with the Texas A&M Aggies at home. Another basically a projected toss-up there. So a really tough three-game stretch there, especially the next two games after this two-game stretch here. But the thing is, once Missouri is past this next five-game stretch here, really our toughest games on paper are past us. Then it's a whole bunch of, again, mostly coin flips, including Alabama at home right now, which is playing like a top 10 team right now. Then you add in there what's projected to be a couple of relatively, and I say relatively, emphasize that very much, because a relatively comfortable home victories against Oklahoma and South Carolina, because I'm not sure that anything is going to be terribly easy in the SEC. Although, well, Arkansas and LSU at Mizzou Arena, fortunately, those were relatively comfortable. Now, the thing is, I'm not going to call this a must-win game tonight for the season, but in terms of, say Missouri loses this game tonight, especially in competitive fashion, not the end of the world in terms of actually making it to March Madness. But if Missouri is to have an outside shot at winning the SEC this year for the first time and having a league championship for the first time in more than 30 years, well, you got to have this one. There is absolutely no doubt about that. The thing is, while you look at the projections right now, while Missouri and Texas, again, I think Texas is a 2-point favorite projected to win over at KenPom, and I think the odds over at FanDuel are pretty close to that as well. You might be confused if you're a Missouri fan looking at Texas's results against Missouri's results, because, well, Missouri might have as impressive of a win as there's been in college basketball so far, winning at Florida. And also Missouri won a game at home against a top 10, 15 caliber Kansas team as well. But right now, really, it's close home losses to really good Auburn and Tennessee teams that are kind of buoying Texas's projections. Their best win so far is not going to knock their best wins aren't going to knock anybody's socks off here. And really based on that, I simply think that Missouri is the better team right now, especially based on what both clubs have done in SEC so far. But of course, in Austin, in the Moody Center, hey, expect another tough game and probably quite possibly a lot of frustrating officiating moments as well. Gird your loins, as I like to say lately. And coming up, a well-deserved honor for Missouri's Caleb Grill, and some very high praise from Tamar Bates as well. And also, boy, it sure looks like Armand Membou has made the right decision to go off to the NFL right now. Let's get to all that in just a little bit. First, though, FanDuel, from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. And the FanDuel app is so easy to navigate, a variety of bets to keep every game exciting. We're talking about not just point spreads, but totals, anytime touchdown scores, of course, high scores in a basketball game, all that good stuff. No matter what you're into, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And in a great week for Missouri basketball, nobody was better than Caleb Grill, without a doubt, and he was named the SEC's Player of the Week for his performances against Florida and Arkansas, where Caleb combined to score 39 points in those games with 9 3-pointers and 7 steals. So obviously just based on that production alone, a very well-deserved honor from young Caleb Grill. And also Tamar Bates. Well, I guess him and Tamar aren't that young, relatively speaking, right? They got a lot of experience, that's for sure. But his fellow veteran Tamar Bates said on Caleb, he practices harder than anybody I've ever seen. So some really high praise there from his teammates. Congrats to Caleb, and congrats to Tamar on a great week as well, and obviously the entire Missouri basketball program. And here's the thing, if Missouri continues to smoke it from downtown, from three-point land, and execute like it did against Arkansas in particular in the half court, good luck to the rest of the league. This truly is going to be an SEC title contender, at the very least a top 3 or 4 or 5 type of team, if that is going to be the case. Even as good as this league is, I really believe that. So tonight against Texas, against a good half-court defense, this is going to be a good test for Missouri's new half-court offense. You know, it's new half-court offense, for lack of a better term. I just think Missouri has gotten it together a little bit better over the last couple games, especially again against Arkansas. One thing Missouri's defense, of course, likes to do to the opposing half-court offense is, number one, don't really let them get settled in the half court, and obviously get turnovers, but at the very least get your offense out of sync and take away at least your first options of what you want to do. Well, Texas does take care of the ball quite well statistically, not really prone to turnovers, but it is notable that the Longhorns will be without Chendall Weaver, by the way, one of its top guards. So it'll be interesting to see how the Horns handle Missouri's pressure. This is an important factor in every Missouri game and will be moving forward. So I think we got another indication of what type of coach that Dennis Gates is based on his own words. He says, I coach my heart out. I coach our guys hard in practice, and they coach themselves in the game almost. Again, that last part there, so important. And they coach themselves in the game almost. So it sounds like Dennis Gates will ride his guys really hard in practice and expect a ton out of them, obviously, in practice in a game. But during the game, during those pressure moments when you've got fans and parents and girlfriends and kids on occasion and yelling at you, distracting you perhaps, maybe what you don't need is your head coach screaming and yelling all the time. Now, obviously, there have been plenty of screaming and yelling type of coaches. Maybe even Norm Stewart, to some extent, could certainly be thrown into that column, who've been really successful. But I got to say, just in general, Coach Stewart, while he may have screamed and yelled, you know what? You go back and study his teams well, he would let those teams coach themselves very often as well. Now, if there was a particularly egregious turnover that you would make, he might coach you right back out of the game onto the bench for a few minutes. But I definitely remember in very important games, Norm Stewart would say, hey, I would let the guys go out and figure it out, basically during the warm-ups or on the fly, who they wanted to guard. That wasn't even necessarily up to me or the assistant coaches at the time, me being Norm Stewart, of course. Now, a lot of that is a bit of an old school mentality there for sure. I don't know that anybody goes quite that far with it in coaching. But the point here is that, once again, unlike a lot of other micromanaging coaches, I think that Dennis Gates, when he gives his team that offensive freedom, I think the longer you go along here in terms of enough practices, enough games, I think you're seeing the dividends being paid right now. As time goes along here, Missouri is looking like a more well-oiled machine here. Obviously, that didn't happen last season, but hey, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I think we saw it in his first season at Missouri as well. And while I'm thinking of it, I know there's a lot of you out there in this audience who are gigantic college basketball fans, of course, not just of Missouri, but of the sport in general. A lot of you know the history of the game even better than I do, for sure. So you tell me, has there ever been a turnaround like this in the history of college basketball. To go from where Missouri was last season to where it is now, of course, there's still plenty of season to be played, so the story hasn't been fully written yet. But still, how about 3 seasons like this? The sandwich of, again, what's looking like 2 really good seasons, and the meat was a complete and utter spoiled mess and disaster. So I don't know. Somebody tell me. I remember a few months ago, I can remember this past offseason, I believe it was Gabe DeArmond over at Power Mizzou. Maybe it was somebody else, but I couldn't find this good breakdown of, hey, here's the guys who have gone winless in major college basketball. And my memory is there wasn't an example of, oh, yeah, this guy totally turned it around, by the way, at that program. It just seems to me like this simply doesn't happen. Now, I will say this. In this new world in which we find ourselves, yes, the portal environment, the NIL environment, that does mean, especially on the basketball court, that you can change very quickly. You can certainly change your roster over very quickly, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work. And especially with a whole bunch of new faces, as a coach, that's a real challenge to get buy-in, especially throughout the roster. It seems like something Dennis Gates got from day one this offseason. It really did from an outsider's perspective. So it's easy to say when the team is winning, but I saw it from the beginning, and I think, again, Gates deserves tremendous credit for this turnaround, which seems to me is unprecedented. All you historians, help me out here. Give me another example of something that was this dramatic. And by the way, on Chendall Weaver for the Texas Longhorns, who is out of the ball game tonight, I did just get one more text here from Jonathan Davis of Locked On Longhorns. He says, on Weaver, not a big score, but does all of the little things, makes a lot of winning plays, hustle plays, offensive rebounds, key stops, grabbing loose balls, etc. So I noticed that Jonathan didn't mention that he's a great ball handler or anything like that. So while he is a hustle player, I don't know that he changes the turnover calculus there for Missouri. Regardless, hopefully Missouri can speed up the Longhorns and get them out of their rhythm. I will just say this, based on what Jonathan's telling me, even though he's leaning toward picking the Longhorns tonight, I got to say his words made me probably more confident in the Tigers' chances tonight than anything. And coming up on the program, Trent Pierce. Is he an NBA guy? Well, last offseason, actually 2 off seasons ago now, the Missouri coaching staff sure seemed to think so, and I have at least one listener who does as well. And also on yesterday's program, I teased a segment about Friday Night Heights, baby. Yes, Missouri Gymnastics. Sorry about not paying it off. I'm going to get to it right after this quick break. But first, let's talk about Prizepicks, the place to get real money sports action with more than 10 million members and billions in winnings. Billions. Prizepicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, Prizepicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. And by the way, another correction from yesterday, I slighted myself. No, Lamar Jackson did hit the over. We had a winner, baby, in Prizepicks. I'm not ready to go with another pick just yet, but just as an example, I had Lamar Jackson for more than 250 passing yards this week. Barely got it by just 4 yards. Travis Kelce for more than 70 receiving yards. That was very easy. Well, it's fun to predict and easy to play with Prizepicks. Flex play, you can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit, by the way. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Get ready to run your game. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is right, $50 for just playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prizepicks. It's Prizepicks. Run your game. By the way, former Missouri right tackle Armand Membou, along with Luther Burden, decided to enter into the NFL draft early, and so far, at least based on the mock drafts I'm seeing, Membou looking like a possible first-round draft pick in the NFL. At the very least, I think you're looking at second day for Armand, so good for him. I'm excited for his NFL future. But speaking of first-rounders, listener Thomas says 2 pieces. If Trent Pierce keeps up, he'll be in the NBA round 1. 6'9", wing 3, and dunking on fools. That's NBA. Secondly, if these freshmen keep getting better, that puts us in the title hunt. Well, I don't know if you mean the title hunt for this season or possibly the future. Either way, I think you've got a point there for sure, at least as we sit here today. But as for Trent Pierce making the NBA, I will say this. He definitely looks like an NBA player in many ways and has an NBA type of skill set. What it's going to come down to for Trent, a guy who's 6'10", listed at 6'10" anyway. You said 6'9". Hey, either way, that's tall enough for a big wing 3 for sure, a small forward if you want to call it that. It's all really just going to come down to Trent Pierce's jump shot to me. Obviously, last season, it wasn't there. He had the ear infection problems, all of that sort of deal. Well, he's been a lot more consistent this year, hitting 35% of his three-pointers so far this year. By the way, hitting nearly 85% of his two-pointers on only 33 attempts, by the way, on twos. So right now, Trent Pierce really is just kind of a three-pointer or dunk type of player. And that's okay, actually, because here's the good thing with Pierce is on the defensive end, I think he's doing a good job of using his size. He's not a lockdown defensive player by any stretch of the imagination, but he's kind of a half rim protector a little bit. Even though he's a small forward, simply his size alone, I think, has been a plus for Missouri more often than not. He's also got one of the best defensive rebounding rates on the team as well, especially for a non-big man. He's one of the best on the team, so he is doing a good job of using his size to his advantage, despite obviously not being a post-up player. He's much more of a jump shooter. What I want to see from modern type of tall players like Trent Pierce, if you're going to be a more perimeter-oriented player offensively, I'm okay with that. But what I need you to do is use your size on the defensive glass and on defense in particular, and I think that's something that Pierce has shown that he can do. So what it's going to come down to for him, if he's going to be a 35% three-point shooter for his career, that's going to be close to good enough. But if he's 40+, say his last season or two at Missouri, whatever it ends up being, well, then he's got a real chance there. And I think the thing that a lot of people who only follow college basketball need to keep in mind is that it is so freaking hard to make the NBA. With the amount of international players that are in the league now, with just how good the American players have gotten in terms of pure competition, it really is going to just come down to his shot. It really is, because he's not going to be a lead scorer on anybody's team. So by necessity, you look at how modern day basketball is played, Trent Pierce is going to be spending a lot of time in the corner offensively if he's going to make an NBA roster. So if he can hit those shots consistently, he's got a real chance to make it. And congratulations on the gymnastics side to Helen Hu with her perfect 10 in Missouri's latest gymnastics meet. And I got to say, the Friday Night Heights, I've said this before, the SEC gymnastics on the SEC network on Friday nights, I got to say, as a TV product, that really has a lot going for it. I think it's one of those things. I said online, hey, this should be a thing. And people said, hey, it is a thing. It's called Friday Night Heights. I got you. I'm with you there. I'm aware that it's a thing. Let me clarify. What I meant to say is that it should be a bigger and more popular thing, because, again, as a TV product, what does it have going for it here? Well, you've got a bunch of young, college-age, attractive women doing crazy athletic stuff. And here's what I mean by that on the latter. Now, if you think the former doesn't matter at all, I got news for you. On television, there's a reason why people who star in TV and the movies usually are attractive people, both the men and the women, by the way. So here's the thing. Again, back to the athleticism of it, though. When I see gymnasts doing the stuff that they do, I mean, it's stuff that I literally cannot even personally imagine doing. As much as I love watching Caitlin Clark playing basketball, for example, I'm a big Caitlin guy. Well, and as much as she would roast me if we played one-on-one basketball at the tender age here of 42 for me, I can at least imagine hitting a step-back three like Caitlin Clark does occasionally. You know why? Because I've done it before. Not at a high percentage, mind you, not as a high percentage as she can, obviously, but physically I can pull off that particular move, even at, again, the tender age of 42. But Helen Hu doing her backflips on the balance beam and that kind of stuff, it's beyond my comprehension. I don't even know how anybody's able to pull that off. That looks like stuff that, you know, I imagined doing when I watched the Ninja Turtles do it when I was 6 years old. But in fact, these young college-age ladies can pull it off. So all of that is really impressive, even if it's technically less than. It's not as good as Olympic quality gymnastics, at least not quite as good. You don't have the international stuff, the international competition. The whole world is not there. But what you do have ladies like Suni Lee, who was on the U.S. Olympic team and was with Auburn last season when I watched, by the way, at the very least. So to me, the fact that the Olympics is really only an every 4-year event. That's when casual fans like myself get into gymnastics for a couple weeks. Well, to me, that shows that gymnastics is a good television product. It's a good TV sports product for all the reasons I've already laid out. So to me, there's more demand for gymnastics than just once every 4 years. I think if the SEC network, if Disney pushed this a little bit more, I actually think it could really catch on, especially with, again, Friday nights. There's not a lot of stuff on television, but the people who are watching television, a lot of it is, well, it can be families, young ladies who might be aspiring gymnasts or who are, you know, maybe just like to watch gymnastics, even if they aren't necessarily aspiring gymnasts as well. I think you're going to draw a lot of families and young ladies. Hey, I'm a girl dad myself. I absolutely will be taking my ladies, my young daughters to a meet one of these days. And why not throw it on TV? What else is happening on a Friday night for the most part? So to me, Friday Night Heights, if you're Disney, if you're the SEC network, I think you've got something here. I'm not even sure that they realize what they have, but push this TV product. And by the way, all of these Missouri gymnasts, I think they're really charismatic too. They have a little bit more, I don't know, swag, for lack of a better word, than a lot of the Olympic gymnast team. It seems like they're having a great time out there, which again translates to a great TV product. They seem like they're friends and they're pulling for each other big time. It's all great. To me, it's all good. I think it's a great product. Hey, SEC Gymnastics, now's your moment. Start promoting it. I think you can get a bigger audience than what you have already. That's just my humble opinion. But you know what? Speaking of the SEC, thanks for making this show your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy. Find it on YouTube and wherever you listen to audio podcasts. So until next time, I'm John Miller. Thanks for listening to Locked on Mizzou.